did I do with my, oh yes, my bucket. So, I do some more, a little more wash demonstration. Specifically, this one seemed like a good panel to film from students. I'm going to be doing a section on light and shadow and reflection as part of that. And I thought I'd reflect. I would. Well, yes, I would reflect on drawing water. You saw me start to ink some water in this panel in one of the other recent videos. Water is something that I enjoy doing. It's one of the first organic patterns or forms that I made a focused effort to try to figure out how to draw. And I should probably do that some other time. But right here, I'm doing wash work. Instead of doing it in ink, I want it to all be, except for these parts that have been inked, I want it to all be very watery. I might go in and spot some very dark shadows when I'm done, but initially I'm just following work that I did in the pencils. This is just like the side of a pencil, sketching out the patterns. And the light areas or high points in the rippling that are reflecting the sky or something, and the dips end up reflecting either darker sky or darker surroundings. So part of drawing water is just thinking about how those shapes work. So you look at pictures of relatively still water, there's these large rippling patterns, but here the legs are gently moving and in the water, and we have circular waves moving away from them. So I'm going to do another ring here, and with this kind of work, because I want it to go very evenly, and I want to also be able to control, in some places I want the edge of the line to be very soft, in other places harder. On the outside I'm going to try to create a clean line, but on the inside I'm going to leave a very large wet area that I'm not going to fill all with wash, because I want the wash to bleed into the wet area. And what I'm doing is pre-wetting the area. There will be no ink, although we're going to see some of the blue here. This printer ink will start running a little bit, so you'll see that. That actually helps with what I'm doing. I drop that out in Photoshop afterwards, or make it equal with the other tones, because this is a black and white book. Yeah, so enough talking. So I tell my students, think about the thing you're going to do before you do it. Without touching the page, move out around the space. In this case, I've sketched it once, so it's even easier. But even when you're drawing it the first time, you'd be figuring, well, legs like that, so the first string's like there, the next string's like that, and this one would be here. And that's what I did to make these. So I'm just trying to make sure that this outer edge is a good, consistent, and has a good line to the outside edge of it. And then on the inside, I'm going to squeeze, get a little more water. I just want to fill and moisten the paper. And again, so this will help the ink run without any hard edges. It's pretty important if you're going to fill large areas to do this. So, hi Dave. David Bowie, one of our 3 cats. Yeah. So start laying it in, and we should get a fairly dark edge. I can even go over a little bit of what I pre-wetted, because that's okay. That'll anywhere you put this down without the pre-wetting, it's going to have a harder edge, especially if you leave it. And now I'm use sponges. All the different properties too. You'll notice that you can kind of draw a little bit with the variations in tone. Make a thicker ring. Oops. And quickly, before that gets a chance to settle too much, because I don't want it to get too dark. And then for the darkest part, the lowest part of the wave, over here suggests that the light's actually coming from over there, sort of out there somewhere. I haven't done a careful job sourcing the directionality of the light in these shots, and it's partially on purpose. I don't always plot it out too much unless it's something very specific that I want to control. I just look to keep things generally consistent. There you go. So you do that, and then so in these large areas, water's running, so often I'll use that. Whoops! Try not to throw things around. So very often I'll just check what I'm doing. I want to get more water in the brush. I squeeze it a bit. I use this to catch it because it's going to get a big drop of it, and then squeeze on the page now that it's flowing, and then push around. Don't keep squeezing the whole time. Just initially push out a little bit of the water, or wash in the case of these, but then stop squeezing. Someone posted about how they were having trouble controlling the flow and whether there was a way to control how much water comes out of it. Not to make it less, other than just to have less water in it, but to get more, you squeeze the barrels of these. And then, of course, the thing to keep in mind is that you need to be mindful of your grip when you're doing that. And then when you don't want to be doing it, you have to be mindful of that too. I don't want, right now I'm holding it by that part of it. I could hold it here. It's hard. But if I hold it here, I have to be careful about not pressing. Line there is kind of cool. I'm going to work with that. Remember to watch for, but also appreciate and exploit your accidents. They're only mistakes if you decide they are. I'm using Bristol, not proper watercolor paper. It's just cheap Strathmore, smooth. Pretty much what I use for everything. The one limitation to that is that I can't redo this wetting a whole lot without letting it dry first. So, I don't think I'm going to rework this one a lot, but to demonstrate, if you need to work quickly, or if you just want to set what you've done and take a moment to think about it, what you do is get a hairdryer. So what you need is a hairdryer. Hairdryer. I put it on this one's inevitable. but I never did finish. Dry surface already. Done. So, if I wanted to, I could go back now and do some more work on that, like this. Build up the details of the wash effect. Which actually I think I will, because that looks nice. Reference for this sort of thing is totally a good idea. I actually don't end up referencing water much anymore, but that's after having used a lot over years and making a point of studying what I'm referencing. You should always be doing that. One of the ways to avoid reference material becoming a crutch that ends up handicapping your work. The guys at Raid Studio, a bunch of friends of mine, talk about this a lot, and I don't get an argument to them about it, but I always amused the way they talk about it, because they're very, I will go without, and that's cool. And I totally respect their badass attitude towards getting shit done. But I'm a big fan of reference, but I have rules about how I use it, because for me the point of using it is to act as a guide for your work, not to control it, not to limit it, not to set parameters on it. It's there as a tool to expand what you're capable of, not restrict it or constrict it. So if you become reliant on reference, if your work needs it in order to look the way it looks, you've got a handicap. Famous cartoonist Sean Phillips shared message boards or had posted on message boards over the years that I've also been a member of, and he's often talked about wrestling with that in his own work, because he developed this really great style, but for a long time there he was basically shooting his own whole comics to do them, and there are a lot of artists who do that, and you can get good results. I wouldn't poo-poo it, but it does have this burden of having to add yet another step. You got to shoot every specific shot, like thinking about closes potentially. Well, here's the thing, depending on how you deal with that material, and certainly if you rely on that much of it, it can certainly make a lot of things a lot easier, but it also, if you allow it to become a deciding factor about what ends up on the page, it will close doors for you as an artist, and it will make it harder and harder to get started on things when you haven't got everything covered, and then you'll end up in situations where you feel like you're compelled to shoot every panel of the book. That's the only reason I bring that up. So, again, I don't think that's a bad idea, but it's a lot of work, and it can be quite constricting for time, and ultimately it should be unnecessary. It should be that most of the time you just draw the things you need to, and you get reference that helps inform the work. So, for example, for characters for some time now, because likenesses are tough, and I never feel compelled to make sure that every single drawing of the face is perfect, or people could go for that. It's not my goal. I want you to remember who they are, but I'm more interested in the emotions coming across, and then drawing precise characters. So, to that extent, I cast my comics, and then I get people to do a whole bunch of faces. Digital cameras are great for this. Tons and tons of different faces. And then I have this when I'm drawing the character. It's not an exact verbatim her. I end up doing things. She's got freckles. Her jawline's a little different. And part of that is that I don't keep this here the whole time I'm working. I have it handy when I need to check things, and when I'm first penciling out pages, and then sometimes I check again. But what I also do is have a copy of the work I've done on the character so far. So in the case of Dream Life, I've got a partial manuscript here, and I'll open it up and I'm checking continuity. So I'm looking for a scene with PJ, and I'll go digging up all the scenes that have her, and I'll look at the ways I've drawn her and how she's mutated and evolved. The characters inevitably do. On projects that are this old, this work goes back to 2007, it's inevitable that first time you drew somebody, near the beginning. Too far. There we go. This is the first scene with PJ. I'm pretty good with her, but like that very first time I drew her, she looks a little different now. But having this photography, this photographic material to look at, helps a lot in maintaining, like her again, the continuity. So, it's around, but it doesn't correct me. It guides me. And to that end, there are several times where I get it as far away from me as I can and just focus on the drawing in front of me and think about whether I've accomplished the emotion I'm looking for, or the feeling, the acting. And a lot of that means, part of the reason I need to get the other face away is because characters, when you're acting, it's like method acting, and as a cartoonist, you're the actor. I think this is true in any art where there's faces involved. You have to sort of, if you want the best results, you have to be able to get your head into the character and think about how they think about things and feel what they're feeling. And it's good practice for empathy. They say that reading fiction makes people more empathic, and I could believe that, and I think that drawing fiction also very much requires you need to get into people's heads and think about how they think about things, and that's healthy, so as long as you don't do too much. So yeah, unexpected aside about reference and method acting in comics. And that was all to say, I think. The reason I brought that up is so for water, I don't really turn to reference much anymore because I spent a lot of time studying it when I was using reference for it. And it's something that I now feel like, yeah, I don't need to check. I'm not too worried about getting it perfectly right because it's not really my goal. I'm looking to evoke and express real life to a degree, but I'm not looking to be photographically realistic. And I don't want to be I don't want to subvert or subjugate my authorship. Comics, your art is your writing, to the reference material. I become a slave to it. So I limit my use to, for example, if I'm drawing buildings, I'll often look for reference material about a famous building, but I'm not necessarily looking for the exact shots that I'm going to draw. I just need to know how it's built, and then I might draw using some of the reference shots very directly, but I always put it away at some point and just sort of wing it. And I'll also probably study beforehand, do some quick sketches in my sketchbook, just to figure out the thing before I have to commit on a final page. So again, I pre-wet the page so that the edges of this ink I'm laying down, this wash, will be less prone to being hard, especially if I go back. They'll bleed together, see? It's the same thing you use a blender marker for. And you can do also after you've laid in wash. Again, you can use the clear. So what I've got here are these different aquash. This is a Pentel, this is another brand. Sumi, I think. And in this one I've put a bit of ink to make wash. And in this, I'm just leaving water. And that becomes my blending tool. So I'm looking to carve these ripples. And it's tricky because basically the sharpness of the ripple tells you how much energy is in it. It's very much like you talk about drawing, gestural drawing especially. So in gestural drawing you want to look for looser, more open forms, sometimes referred to things like S-curves and C-curves, and straight lines perhaps, but you're avoiding hard angles. But when a line tightens enough that it becomes a hard angle, that's putting more kinetic energy into it. Same thing goes with these ripples. Right here, because she's introducing energy, I want a little sharpness where these wave fronts collide. but the waves are generally pretty broad and wide ripples. And then here they're fairly, she's not making a lot of waves, she's just rippling the water. But I do think I want to cut back a bit on this one. And so I use pocket brush. There's also white paint or white acrylic, which essentially is what this is. This is white acrylic paint in a pen. It's very handy for drawing. Create a hard line of it. But some distortion here intentionally. And pat it. It just spreads and blends it a little. Where I want it to be less of a hard line. Stop and think every once in a while. That's what I'm going to do now. I think I've recorded enough. You get the idea? Let's, I think we'll do the bottle, and then we'll be done. Now, pre-wash. I'm not sure I'm going to do this area, but I'm going to wet right back. Free to roam. I'm not worrying too much about getting exactly along the lines. I rather run over a little, and I'll be careful about the wash. And then remember, I always have the option to use white paint or something, white pencil, or gel pens now. A lot of stuff I haven't tried actually. I've been using the same tools for this one project years. And I experiment fairly often, but lately, just because I'm focused on this thing, probably less than I have in a long time. When Bristol starts drying pretty quick, especially when your house is dry. It's winter here, so my house is really dry. So that's something to watch. I'm going to be okay with this because it's doing what I like so far. But you can see there where it's wetter, how much easier that went down. I'm just going to push that moisture around, and I think we're going to do that to make sure that we don't get too much of a hard edge. You notice though how these bits that I just put in and the bit I just patted are running together nicely? It's because of the pre-wetting. Here's where I worry a little bit about the edge of the bottle line, laying in the wash. I'm going to blur all of that a bit because that's actually underwater, but there we go, clean line, nice long smooth gesture. I tell my students, the smoother, longer, more graceful the line, the more elegant it will feel. And the only way you do that is actually by doing it. You can't hesitate through a smooth long line. You gotta just go. If you need to, you think about it a bunch of times like I did there before you do it. But in the end, you just gotta go. A lot about drawing well and dynamically is about trusting yourself, which is always hard. And the only way you get to trusting yourself is with a lot of practice. You put the mileage on, you learn the tools, and you start developing intuition and better instincts, and increasingly, your ability to accomplish what you set out to do. It's never going to be perfect. You always fall short a little bit. We're always better at seeing the faults than we are at accomplishing perfection. It doesn't have to be dark. It's a little too big. Wrong shape. In writing, they say you have to be prepared to kill your babies. In art, there will be lots of times where you have a line or a shape that it's your baby. You like it. But you have to do a little step back at your work and look at the larger goals it's trying to accomplish. And if it's necessary, just do what you need to do. I'm going to show you, I finished the top panel here, and you can see where I've gone in with the white paint and put in subtle detail highlights and reflections, and then I've sketched another layer of sort of patterns, wrinkles in the water. Flatten that out. I just have the hard line on the outside where it's out of the water, and everything else is softened through the water. So water is essentially an extreme atmospheric effect. It's a very thick atmosphere. It's true physics-wise even, that it behaves like a super dense liquid. Sorry, that's backwards. Air behaves like a super... What's the opposite word of dense? Thin? Super thin liquid. I forget my words sometime. So, you can... This is white gouache I'm just slightly playing with. And just experimenting. If I screw it up, I can always go back and paint over that. I'm using Pelican. What are you doing? There it is. Graphic white. I've been using this since high school. I think I knew about it before. So my mother was an illustrator, an artist, and so a lot of the tools I was already familiar with. They were around the house. I used to, one of the reasons I used these pens is that they were the first pen. They were the pens my mother used, and I would draw with her. It was one of the ways I could spend time hanging out with her as a kid. I found she sent me this greeting card I did when I was like 10, I think. No. Chinese. Maybe 9? I don't know. Something like that. And it's cute. And I know, I'm pretty sure I drew it with these DR drawing pens. And she'll get annoyed with me. Artists don't want their pens to be damaged. I had some of my students loaned a friend, or my students loaned a friend a Pentel pocket brush, and the friend did some, and if you push against the bristles, you damage the bristles. And he got it back, and I had a fork in it. We were trying to see if we could get it back. Sometimes you can get it wet and roll it, and it's eventually if you bend the bristles, you'll get a damaged brush. So, I'm not sure, if like a comb or something maybe, but if it's actually bent, synthetic bristles, if they get a kink in them, starts to get done for. When you get one or two stray ones, I just snip those off very carefully with tiny toenail scissors. I keep them pretty long. This one's getting on to 2 or 3 years old. I've got many. I was just digging through to see if any of them were salvageable for students who forget to bring theirs into class. And possibly, well, I'm always reluctant to put the ink in them to find out if they still work. I should start using some of them to experiment with. Some people use needles or various other tricks. You can take the old empty refills reputedly and put your own, wash them out probably, and put your own ink in here. I might actually try putting some Indian ink in one of these to try it out on with Indian ink. And then theoretically you could probably wash it and the brush, try to get the ink out, and then put in something else, colored dye, for example, or colored inks. Not dye. That's an interesting experiment. I should try that. Okay, So as I was saying, what I did here you treat this like a flat plane first of all, right? And then in that plane, these forms are compressed, a compressed grid. Imagine a chainmail fence, but then squashed. So that the links of the chainmail are squished down. Where the wire is on the chainmail, not the chainmail, chain link, not chainmail, chain link fence.
You will believe you're mad. You will believe you've gone insane. But I tell you, if you follow the secret window and you die...
So imagine this is like a flat plane with a squashed grid on it. And then there would be one here, but this activity interrupts it. And it's very squished and diagonal, compressed, because the wave action is moving towards the pier. So making it compressed and linear like this makes it feel what I recognize as the pattern things take. The highlights are light, catching light from the sky. The areas where it's concave are darker except for ripples in the surface. The object in the water is faint, an extreme atmospheric, extreme version of atmospheric depth, where things get grayer at distance. Water is essentially very dense atmosphere. It's actually true of the atmosphere that it's very dispersed fluid. At least it acts in terms of physics like a very, very dispersed fluid. We use fluid dynamics to help map the weather. And then we have ripples caused by the bottle in the water there. It's a wake, a boat wake, basically. So that's something to look up when you have that something moving through the water. And then her legs are moving, so there's rings of waves getting larger until they're overwhelmed, coming from her legs. And then we've got some sort of top lighting. I often use a bit of an atmospheric lighting. It's a little bit unspecific in its direction, but generally in this case it's over here coming down. I haven't done the surface here. We have increasingly darker shadow as the surface gets further away from the source of light. And some cast shadows. Lovely cast shadow on the surface here with texture in it. And so, you know, I often think of it as like you want to be able to feel into the space with your eyes almost. That's how I've come to think of it. You know, one of the old competing theories of how optics work. It's not true physically how things are. Light reflects off things and comes into our eyes. But they used to think that perhaps the light came from our eyes and illuminated things. I kind of think of like a sense of visual touch, a sense of space in my head. It's almost like a synesthetic crossover thing. Although I wouldn't go so far as to say I am, but I've learned to feel the space with my eyes, and I'm looking for ways to push things back, and then when I need to bring things forward. So I'm gonna just noticed. Good to get the ink running and then make a quick stroke. Don't keep trying if it doesn't work. Sometimes it means it should be done. I'll probably thin that one. Like that. Now I'm making these banisters. pop out. You want to make sure that your acrylic dries before you put ink on it, because it'll damage the pens eventually. It'll clog up your pen if you get it wet. Get the acrylic on it wet. Gets into the fibers and eventually the ink stops flowing. Oh, I'm congested. Been fighting off a cold. I think I mostly thought it, but mucus lingers. Delightful. One of the prices of teaching around people again. Probably need the exposure though. Years of cartooning at home alone can't have been good for my immune system. So you get the idea? We've got some like here under the trees. Background, midground, foreground, highlights, pop. Here I'm going to try to communicate. This is darker. And I want wet surface so that I can blend it well. Worked out. Not actually what the garbage cans in that park look like. Wire garbage cans, but what they look like in another shot that I did in a different area, and I wanted some of the continuity of things like that to carry through. Even though you're still in the same area. So pushing back areas of the trees. I've not precisely followed reference for this area. I've changed the garbage bags and I'm not all patterns and stuff, but to see the way the shadows are in leaves, so I'm creating a similar modeling effect. So as an example of using reference to inform your drawing, but not being beholden to it, a slave to it, not letting the reference correct your work.
The preacher man says it's the end of time. Says that America's rivers are going dry. The interest is up. The stock market's down. You guys got to be careful walking around here this late at night. No, we don't, ma'am. I'm sorry. This is the perfect place to get jumped.
If you think the end of the world is coming.
No. So says the preacher man, but I don't go by
There's
what
the
he
far
says.
edge, there's a foreground edge, so first we don't want to shade any of the foreground. Knock that back in space. So again, this is a way of showing depth by having a background, midground, and foreground. And in this case, the midground is in shadow. underneath all the trees. And the background is in the light, but it's in the distance. I'm probably going to lighten the key line around it, the ink lines that I've done here in Photoshop for atmospheric depth. That's this hedge, distant hedge. And I'm just making little swirling patterns with my brush. Needs a bit more wash in it. I often have the paper handy to do this into rather than doing it on the page, but you can also have a scratch pad. You've seen me use those before too. Oh, there's still water in there. Yep, there we go. I'm just using the tip. It's nice and wet now. Lets me spot little details more. You'll notice this time I haven't pre-wet the page. I want the harder edge. So green is usually a in tone. It's usually a mid to light color. My color work, I often do this, so black and white wash line work. And then in Photoshop, I assign color values to the tones. And I do some fills, but I like to do more just tinting. Gives it a very luminous light. All the K value is done in my ink and wash work. I want these ones in the foreground to pop, but I need a little bit of suggestion of shadow on the dirt. Should be dark. Now this line of hedges catching light, it's in the light more. She's just going to be approaching the shadow. So to think about, there's one here. I'm putting in shadows behind it on the hedge behind. But I don't want them to be too dark. Don't worry about being too precise for this. You can be if you want to try. Something white on there. But up close, what I'm doing are pretty abstract shapes. You look at the history of abstraction in painting and art, it's really interesting where there's a point in romantic realism where an incredible liveliness is brought to the paintings by using, instead of very smooth, invisible brushstrokes, by using subtle, abstracted, textured brushstrokes that did things like suggest the quality of the fabric, the appearance or lack thereof of weave, surface qualities, but then also was an increasing presence of the artist's hand and a kind of expressiveness. And I think of it as the same way a good writer develops a range of language they can use. They're not just adherent to strict grammar. There's always rankle a little bit at grammar police. I'm dyslexic too, so I gotta fight for some breathing room. But also just the idea of expressiveness coming in both use of, in this case, good visual grammar, but also an inventive. If you can find visual grammar that's inventive, that does what you need it to do, this is good practice. So, backside of the trees, a little darker, already done it with the ink. Just boosted a bit with wash. I'm gonna have to change the battery soon. So we're gonna pause. Continuing that far hedge. Okay. There we go. New battery. I'm glad I got 2 batteries for this thing. I've got a Canon S95. It's picked it up a couple years back. I love that camera. Wish I had like 2 or 3, just for like redundancy, safety. You don't really need 2 or 3 anymore. There was a time when I used to have 2 cameras going, film cameras, and a Nikon F, and then a newer one. I forget what model. A cheap secondhand SLR I picked up. The F was a composite of lenses that I inherited from my father, and a body a friend gave me when I was around 19, 18. I first moved out from home. It was a lady my roommate was involved with, who had been given many interesting gifts by previous suitors, and I was in the habit of giving away stuff. She found out I had this lens that I was looking for a Nikon bayonet body for, and she offered up this one that she had been given, which was kind of awesome, with the Nikon F, just the original F, first model. It's a tank. It still works. I just don't get film anymore. Anyway. So, I'm doing light modeling. Again, areas that come forward are lighter, things I want to carve in, emulate the shapes. So, in my head, I'm a very visual thinker, and in my head, I have a 3D model of this thing going. And I'm trying to see, but also I always think of it as feeling with my eyes. Feel it. It's kind of, I don't literally think this is how we see, but the old, one of the old competing ideas of how optics work was that light came from our eyes. It's pretty silly sounding in modern context, but I think it's magical thinking, but symbolically, that's a very valid metaphor. I don't like that shadow. I'm using my whiteout pen. Lighten it a little. Too heavy, wrong direction. The old Pentel correction pen. Very handy tool. A lot of people use it for sketching, but I actually use it for a lot of my art now. I still use white paint. Actually, yeah. I'm doing texture on cement, and so this brush, it's actually a little split from heavy use, but that's okay. I use it mostly for filling, and then I can use the errant hairs to create multiple little ticks that often makes just very gently tapping the page. Just, you don't want to stroke, just can do this with a single point, but actually having split hairs makes it faster because you can fill up. This is like stippling on cement walls. A little darker, denser in here. I'm going to push this back behind this edge. Just a shadow of a big pot. Matching, this is the same material, so it needs a bit of the same treatment for consistency. Continuity. And you've got a certain texture for the water. Maintain that kind of pattern unless the weather's changed. Got a texture for the stone. Try to repeat that consistently. I like to use a little variation here and there, different kinds of stone, different materials, but generally, continuity is a good thing. It's organizing. It's the grammar of the image. This means this, that means that. You understand? Good. So I haven't even started on this area. Let's control the shot. Well, on my roughing stage, you've already seen the blue here. I don't worry too much about being perfect. When I blow things up, I check stuff and make increasing corrections as I add more detail and refine. It's like tiny little hatches. And that's probably mostly cut off, but I'll leave that as is. This area, we'll start by pre-wetting, I think. So again, this is what I want to have a lot of consistency. So I'm moistening the paper so that it will all bleed nicely together. Cap that right, dip that right. Don't have to get too soaky, just enough. Use your brush, you want to always try to be dragging away from the base of the brush. You shouldn't be pushing into this. You want to pull the bristles for the best life span of the tool. I'm a little rough with these things. I wear them out over time, especially just use one. I do this almost all my work now, so these guys get a lot of mileage. I just finished, well, I'm finishing. This is one of the last pages in Dream Life. It's a 162 page long comic book. And it's only like half done too. I originally imagined 300 pages. It's probably less than half done, to be honest. I'm looking at how originally scripted it, but I don't do all the page breaks. I kind of work things out organically. And I wanted to take a lot of time with things in this book. So, not just in the amount of time I spend working on the art, but in telling the story. Like what I'm doing right now, these washes, this is a 6-page silent, wordless sequence. The character isn't, the book isn't wordless, but I have several mostly alone times, or dreams, where there is no speech, and I don't use thought balloons in this book, or voiceover. There's no narrator. You're just there watching things play out. So things take a while. I'm doing a lot of showing. And then I use more detail, so there's lots to look at. I don't expect this book to be read quickly. I know a lot of people will, and people automatically sort of do flip through and absorb very quickly with a lot of comics. I encourage you to reread and to slow down. Not to be pretentious about it, but I did think about what's in the background. The place is the story, as much as the people in the moment. It's the moment, it's the space. And I'm trying to capture a sense of place, and I don't know. It's a combination of feelings. It depends on the scene. But I use setting and symbols and hopefully kind of effective subliminal icons to suggest ideas. So in the scene with PJ walking down to the harbor, washing her feet, and then into a park, there's a bunch of different things going on. The traveler's rituals. Traveler's rituals are interesting. Like in Toronto, there's a statue downtown. It's Queen's Park. Man on a horse, if it's still there. I forget who it is. The name. If you're leaving town and you go drink with your friends, you're supposed to all go touch the horse's balls for good luck. That kind of thing. That's kind of a raunchy one. This one's a bit less raunchy. She just makes a point of washing her feet when she arrives in a new town in the local river or lake or water source. I imagine for her it's a water thing, a swimmer's thing. But it also has a lot of other symbolism. And then she goes and walks off into the wood to look for a beacon, look for direction. I want to suggest an underside to this, but not get too detailed. So I'm just going to put a shadow line. Leave the rest of that. Little cast shadow from the pole. Now in this case I'm wetting it because I'm also going to, if I need to, daub it off to lighten it. I just want to tint, but it's a lit surface. Keep it from getting dark. Cast shadow on the garbage can. His overhang. And the darker material as well on these. And the rounding surface suggests a highlight. Along with this arc here, I'm not going to do the whole surface. This is one of those creative interpretation things, but it feels more like the right shape with this arc rather than just two bands of darkness, because these are facing up, so they're going to be lit as well. But you know, the exact shape's not so important. Just a gesture of the shape of the light. That's what I went for. Lock that back a little there. Some red in there. Oh, disappear in Photoshop. When I first started doing this book, I was experimenting with color. I did a chunk of it in color. You can still find the pages online some places. But it takes a lot more time to get the right colors. They're a big part of storytelling when they're there, so it greatly slowed things down. I like doing it, but it's just not feasible right now. Revolver 3 has gone out to Kickstarter backers of Dracula, and that's going to be the last issue in color. It's going to be available print on demand soon. I'm not sure if I'm going to ever distribute it outside of digital and POD options. We'll see if a publisher takes interest at some point. It's possible. But I'm getting great responses from the backers. That's nice to see. I'm eager to, once I wrap this up, to start working on laying out the next chunk of Dracula pages. I want to go quick on them as much as I can. There'll be definitely some March is going to be mad. March Madness. Because I'm going to be doing a Kickstarter for this book. It's not going to be as insane, I think, as some past ones have been, because a lot of things are already in place. I've got most of the rough stuff worked out. I'm working on my taglines right now, little bits of writing, the blurbs to the back of the cover kind of thing. Quote-unquote spits. It's difficult stuff. It's annoying. There are a lot of ways to talk about what this book's about, and I'm trying to find the right one. Not getting very much ink out there. Okay, there we go. More like it. So don't be afraid of a big thing like that. Just be ready to go quick, and remember I pre-wet this area, so I've got a forgiving edge. It's going to bleed a lot. And the modeling works in terms of urban cement. You know, again, here's reference material of this park. It's not perfect. I'm not going to try to directly draw things, but there's all sorts of stuff in the cement. Different colors and patterns. So the way you can kind of evoke that, what I'm doing, is just being really a little bit organic about it. Push that around a little, blur it. touch. You're not rubbing too hard. The Bristol will take a lot of friction. Just getting a little contact off of the brush. I'm starting to get some balling, so I gotta stop there. Leave that alone for a bit. Quickly smooth it in. Other places, just a little. And then here, you know, this is again where you would use that hair dryer trick. Why, indeed, Max, that's an excellent idea. I think I will. So again,
Okay.
dry already. There's not really a lot of water. This thing is bone dry, it's winter. Dusty. Pretty wet again. Just a bit. Have your paper, your toilet paper for daubing stuff off ready. Full. Let's try. What's this one like right now? A little better. This is a brush that's in better shape and I think a little lighter. Again, blend. Add a little tone. Pat off excess. Knock that back. Send a couple squares. Some streakiness. That's kind of cool. Just like a blending marker. I don't think I wet that first. I should wet that first. Blend that in. And, you know, I'm not squeezing a lot of liquid out again. Enough. I'm gonna be careful with the Bristol or any other paper that's not meant for water. It could be a little more slack on, not slack, but liberal on watercolor paper. It's a bit tougher. Comes to the water. This is just the shadow of the trees. The light gets in there. Ultimately, it's a bit shady, a bit dark. Peter's walking around in sort of hobo hippie clothes. Your backpack. actually a redhead strawberry. Black and white book, so what do you know? What do you care? You can't see that. I want that top of that bag to be lighter there and darker here. And a little highlight to show the edge. Dark under the flap. I have to check continuity when I'm doing post-production of the book on that flap. I think I made it bigger sometimes. Comics are like that. A lot of editing if you want to make good comics. Checking and rechecking, and editing and refining. And wearing and whittling it down. And building it up. And whittling it down some more. At least that's what I do. Your mileage may vary. Alright. I'm normally not talking on camera when I'm doing this, so I don't lose track quite so much. There we go. That's a little bit blended a bit, but not too much. I like that shape. And now we're done. Yeah.